I've talked a lot this offseason about Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Zach LaVine, even kind of Ayo Dosunmu's role changing for the Chicago Bulls. And even we have an episode on Jalen Smith and what his future with this team could be like. But one player did sign a deal this offseason that I want to talk about, and that's Patrick Williams. Is he under the most pressure to start succeeding for the Chicago Bulls? We'll talk a little bit about that. Plus, Ayo listed as one of the Chicago Bulls' best kept secrets in the mailbag. All that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. And I want to start off talking about Patrick. We know that Patrick Williams signed his 5-year, $90 million deal with the Chicago Bulls this offseason. And it was a deal that some Bulls fans understand. Some Bulls fans sit in the corner that, why'd you pay that much for Patrick Williams? Some people even think that the Bulls should have let Patrick Williams walk, considering how he really shown or lived up to the expectations of a number 4 overall pick in the NBA. Now, where I sit on it is I think that Patrick Williams' deal is fair and it's a solid deal, especially for somebody who provides defense and three-point shooting. That's about what you're going to get for a player like that, especially being 22 years old, and you're going to be able to lock them up right up until what they're supposed to be their prime. But the question is, even with that deal, right, one thing that we've seen around the NBA recently is that teams will sign players to deals or players will sign with teams to lock in the money. And then, if you do need to move them or something else on, is that, you're potentially getting more back because they're under contract for a handful of years. And so that's kind of what, in the mindset of the Bulls, it was a calculated risk, is that even if Patrick Williams does not work out as far as like really stepping up his game, one or two things can happen. He can either be a solid player that's still going to stick around on a lot of rosters, right? Most NBA rosters like having players like Patrick Williams on them, players that can get you double-digit points, not really taking a whole crap ton of the shots. But the Bulls fans want more of that from Patrick Williams, especially now that he's making $18 million a year annually up until the 2028-29 season, where he does have a player option in that season, so he could get out of that deal by the time he's 27 years old. And so how much pressure is Patrick Williams under to really step up? You have Modest Bucilis, who to me right now is probably going to be a 3 with his size until he really adds on to some weight. But he is a guy that could potentially be a long-term 4. Not necessarily a ding on Patrick Williams, because one of them can move to the 3, one of them can play the 4. Having interchangeable forwards is kind of the thing now in the NBA. That's not a terrible thing. I'm not mad at that if that ends up being the case, right? Regardless of who between Modest Bucilis and Patrick Williams ends up being the 3, ends up being the 4. At the end of the day, it's just whatever comes with that one, right? Especially under Billy Donovan, where he uses the 3 and the 4 pretty much the same way. But you have Modest Bucilis there, who could eventually step in and take over that starting power forward role, and then that could regulate Patrick Williams to the 3, or it could regulate Patrick Williams to the bench, depending on what the rest of your makeup of your team is. Then you also have Julian Phillips, a young player who hasn't really gotten a chance to show much like Patrick Williams. He's a player that can play either the 3 or the 4. He has really good upside, as far as defensively athletic. I would say that he's even more aggressive than Patrick Williams right away, but aggression doesn't necessarily equate to a better player. It just brings a different dynamic and kind of gets you some of that in-between game. And I think this is going to be a big season for Julian Phillips as well, to show how much of a building block can you be for the Chicago Bulls. And then you still have Dalen Terry there as well, who could potentially be a long-term 3, an actual 3. I see him as a 2/3. And if Modest Bucilis turns out to be your 4, then you have Dalen Terry, maybe, who can be there as another defending guy who, doesn't shoot a whole lot. And so while Patrick Williams just signed his new contract, and I want to be clear that he just signed his new contract, it does not mean that you're still not under pressure to succeed. And it does not mean that you're still not fighting for a role on this team. Now, I do think Patrick Williams is going to be the starter coming into this, as he's been basically every season he's come into his NBA career. But we've also seen Patrick Williams lose that starting position. Now, part of the hope is that with a point guard like Josh Giddey, and more shots going around with DeMar DeRozan being gone, is that it's going to open up opportunities, and Patrick Williams is going to be one of the guys who steps into those opportunities, grabs that bull by the horn, and then tries to take it. And like Patrick Williams did last December, right? I always go to December for Patrick Williams, because that's not only how his best month, but it's also kind of more how I see the Chicago Bulls playing this upcoming year is how they played in December when, DeMar and Zach were down at points in time, and the Bulls really had to kind of spread the ball around. In that month of December, 14 points per game for Patrick Williams over the course of about 15 games. 52% shooting from the field, 50% shooting from three. He took the same 10 shots, right? 3.5 shots coming from the three-point range. He also chipped in 4 rebounds, right under a steal and right under a block per game, 0.9 for both those, and only had 1.1 turnovers per game. So, that's the type of output I think at the bare minimum we should want to see from Patrick Williams. But again, it's kind of more of the aggression, right? That's the thing. And I've had this conversation with Pat, the designer. Me and Pat had a really good conversation when he brought up how Torrey Craig brings more than Patrick Williams. And then we went over the numbers, and the numbers were basically the exact same that they brought as starters. But the key difference is that Torrey Craig just looks more aggressive out there, and he plays more aggressive than Patrick Williams. And so it passes the eye test, whereas you see passive P sometimes, and then it's just like, it doesn't leave the same feeling at the end of the game versus a guy who was continually playing active versus a guy who gets similar stats, but sometimes it seems like they're being quite passive, right? So it really comes down to that. What I always say with Patrick Williams is the thing between his head, right? Like that's between his ears. It's just that space between his ears. It's all mental for Patrick Williams. And I think if he unlocks himself mentally and is a much more aggressive player and that fights for more of the offensive rebounds, like those type of things, slashes to the rim a little bit more consistently, you're going to have 2 passers now on the court with Kobe White and Josh Giddey that can get you the ball. And so it just comes down to that. But I do think Patrick Williams is under pressure to start succeeding more for the Chicago Bulls in the areas that he hasn't yet in his career. Now, I'm not going to say that means he's going to be off the team. He's going to be traded. I'm not saying he's going to be out the NBA. Those things aren't what I'm saying at all. But it's that you got people behind you who are fighting for minutes. And the fact of the matter is that if we keep seeing passive P and these other players like Modest Musillis, not going to be the defender Patrick Williams is right away, if ever, right? But he is a weak side. Somebody who passes the eye test because he gets those weak side blocks that are going to be great, right? Julian Phillips, another guy who has that potential for kind of the more eye-popping plays, and we'll see what comes out of that, right? And then not even to mention the Bulls, if they do end up keeping their top 10 pick, if the Bulls are bad enough to where they keep their top 10 pick, yes, center, the guy from Duke, is the guy that I would love the Bulls to get if they can't get a Cooper Flag, which would mean that the Bulls would have to be, get luck up. They don't have to be the worst team in the league, but luck in the lottery to get the number 1 overall pick. We don't know if that's going to happen, right? So it's things like that have to fall in place. And I think that Patrick Williams really has to come into the season and be willing to attack it, man. And attack. That needs to be Patrick Williams' mindset is attack. 1 block, 1 steal per game, right? That's what you need to aim for. 5 rebounds per game, those type of things. Like go out there and get active with Patrick Williams. Try to get a putback every single game that gets the crowd into it. Those type of things. And so, that's the hardest thing to really gauge. Patrick Williams has skill. And while people try to paint Patrick Williams as like a bust, he's really not. He's the type of player that's going to stick around on NBA teams for years. I would even say that a lot of championship caliber rosters want Patrick Williams. But again, the Bulls fans have a little bit more invested because we drafted him at number 4, and that came with its own expectations, whether right or wrong. And so I think that Patrick Williams is under some pressure this season, and I think a lot of that pressure should be on him as well. Like, listen, you got your money now. You got your long-term deal. You're no longer a rookie, but you got young players behind you that are coming for your spot if you aren't going to play. And so hopefully this could be a wake-up call for Patrick Williams. But let me know what you guys think down below in regards to Patrick Williams. And in this upcoming season, how much pressure do you think Patrick Williams is under to succeed for the Chicago Bulls? Do you think that Billy Donovan kind of puts him in different positions? And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, he needs to move back to the 3. As I've said before, I've even broke it down on multiple episodes. Patrick Williams moving back to the 3 does nothing for his game because the problem isn't the position that Patrick Williams is playing. The problem is his aggression level and how he is mentally involved in the game. And so let's see what happens with Patrick Williams. Now, with that said, I also want to talk about an article from Bleacher Report in which they listed every team's best-kept secret for the 2024-25 season. And for the Chicago Bulls, I expected like a Modest Musillis to be listed as this, something like that. It was Ayo Dosunmu. And I don't know how much of a secret Ayo Dosunmu is anymore when you look at the defensive games he's had against players like Trae Young, et cetera, over the course of his NBA career, how last season when he stepped into a starter role, the points that he averaged were great at averaging almost 15 points per game on really good efficiency, all those type of things. Ayo Dosunmu has been a player that every role that he's had for the Chicago Bulls, he's found a way basically to exceed. And, Ayo's a really damn good basketball player, a two-way player, and you need those on your basketball team. Two-way players are always going to be coveted because of what they can bring. But Ayo started showing more flashes of what he could bring offensively last season, being way more aggressive offensively at times, shooting the ball with way more confidence than when he shot at almost any other point of his NBA career. And, he came to that with the best averages of his career as well. 12 points per game on 50% shooting, 3 assists, 2.8 rebounds. But like I said, the thing that made Ayo Dosunmu numbers step up is how he stepped the numbers that show how Ayo Dosunmu stepped up was the numbers as a starter. 37 games he started last season, almost half the season, 15 points per game on 50% shooting. He took 5 3-pointers per game and hit that at a 41% clip. 4.5 assists, 3.5 rebounds, 1 steal per game. Also 1 turnover per game, but again, that kind of the Bulls played kind of sloppily at that time. But so overall, Ayo is a really, really damn good player, and he's moving now into a situation where he's going to be the first guard off the bench for the Chicago Bulls, stepping into a role left by Alex Caruso, a team favorite. And so, that's what it comes down to. He's been in the rotation basically since his rookie year, so we know that Ayo can perform. And he's every time that he gets more responsibility, outside that season he came in as a starting point guard, he's really dazzled last year. When you look at last year, the lowest turnover frequency of his career, he was 60% true shooting overall from the field. Those are really good numbers. And so I get it, they listed Ayo as the best kept secret. I don't know if he's a secret anymore around the NBA, but I will say this, is that on the Bulls team, you have other players you need a game plan for, but Ayo Dosunmu is going to start being on that scouting report. And much like I said with Kobe White and him being on the scouting report, how does Ayo Dosunmu grow his game going into that next season now with being on that scouting report? And that's something that we need to look at. Ayo is coming into one of the more important roles that he's going to have, whether it's starting or not. He's going to have a hugely important role for the Chicago Bulls team, being that first guard. He's going to be kind of the glue guard. And the fact of the matter is, making it work. He can play next to Giddey. He can play next to Kobe White. He can even play somewhat with Zach, even though the worst returns that we've seen from Ayo is when he's starting point guard next to Zach LaVine. But he's going to be a glue guy for this team, and he's even going to play some wing, which last year he played most of his minutes at the 2 and at the 3. Some minutes at the 1 for sure. But, Ayo Dosunmu has the chance to be a Swiss Army knife of sorts for the Chicago Bulls team, and he can really make the team by doing those things. And so, if you're not game planning for Ayo, or if you think that if Ayo has a chance to come in to the game and really kind of change the pace and the dictation of that game with this two-way play, it's going to be big for the Bulls. But we need to see that consistently from him this season. But let me know what you guys think on that. Is Ayo a kept secret by the Chicago Bulls, or do you think at this point the NBA needs to take notice of what the two-way capability of an Ayo Dosunmu is, and what role do you see him playing for the Bulls next season? Let me know all that down below. With that said, let's go ahead and move into the last segment of the show for today, and this is the most important segment, especially on Sundays. That's the mailbag. We're going to get into this first one. This one's from Corn.
Hey, what it up, dude, King? It's your brother Corn, man. Let's get right into it, brother. Let's talk about this, man. We've been talking about him. I haven't really talked about him, but I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna talk about each player what I want to see from this season. I'm gonna do a little thing like that I'm gonna call up and what I expect. Not what I expect, what I hope to expect from this player, right? So let's get into it. Kobe White is the first one up because that's the main one, right? We've been talking about. Not looking to Kobe to really up his scoring. I think that's going to come naturally to him. Him scoring 25, averaging 25, 26 points. Yeah. I'm going to look and see how he's impacting us leading and winning. If people just looking to him just to score more and all that in that effect, okay. That's your prerogative, right? But me, I want to see how he affects the team now as being the guy, as being the leader. I'm going to be watching the little nuances of that. People is nervous about Zach and Billy and that DeMar's not there no more. Well, Kobe's there. He got to take that mantle. And I believe he will. That's what I'm be looking for him this season. How he stepped up as a leader. He spoke about it. He talked about it, and he said he's ready. He's saying all the right shit, right? Saying all the right shit. But when it's time for it, and I'm not talking about the good times, because this is going to be a tough season. That's how I want to see how he moves, how he handles himself in press conference. I want to see Kobe White the leader, and I want to see him be the leader to come. And then if that comes out to way I think that he's going to be the leader, yes. That question, can he be a star in this league? Yes. But it doesn't happen with him scoring. It's more than that. I'm looking at him as the man, as the leader of this regime. You already know what time it is, King. Love you. Love you, see Red Nations.
All right, Kobe White being the guy. I think that we need to see if he is actually the guy. Like he showed, I named it on, I think it was yesterday's episode, right? It's time for Kobe White to show, can he be a star or is he just a damn good player? Now, either one is fine, right? You could be just a damn good player that can score. Like you said, it's not necessarily looking to up his scoring a whole lot. Like if he can go from 19 to 24, 25 points per game, that's a huge leap based off what his volume was last season. But it's more about the in-between things. How do you step up as a defender at times, as a leader for the Chicago Bulls, right? How do you be more consistent as well? There are a lot of games where Kobe White had 30, and then some games where he had 8, and he couldn't really get going, right? So those are the things that we're looking to see from Kobe White is how much does that part extend for his game, and can he step up? So, yeah, I won't say that he's the guy yet. I will say that this is the season that he needs to show, especially if the Bulls find a trade for Zach LaVine around the midseason. But I say this, even if Zach LaVine is still on the roster, it's now Kobe's time to show he is the guy. I get it. Zach has been disrespected this offseason. Zach is still a damn good player in his own right, but this is Kobe White's time to show what he can be. And if he is the time for him to take the reins of the team until we get a superstar or whatever else, can he do that this season? And that's the question that's going to be ahead of Kobe White. It's not just about the stats. Of course, that plays a part and a role in it, but it's not just about can you up your averages? Can you up your impact? That's the more difficult thing, upping an impact, because you can score more points and not necessarily impact the game as much. Can you up your impact this season, Kobe White? I think he can. I think he's up for the test. I'm excited to see if he can do it. But great voicemail, Corn. Let's get into this next one. This one's from Big Country.
What's up, Haize? This your boy Country calling out the 225. I just wanted to say, man, I went back and listened at your very first podcast. And I gotta say, bro, you came a long ways. You stayed motivated and you elevated. I give you your props, bro. I appreciate that. But I just got one question. Do you think Luke Kennard or Marcus Morris would be a good fit on a team when it comes to, like, veterans if the Bulls make a move and get off some players? That's all I got for you, man. Keep bringing the content. Love what you're doing. Peace.
Shout out, brother. He says, first of all, I appreciate you mentioning the growth. Like I went back recently, I probably like the last 3 months, and listened to that first episode. And while I'm not as like embarrassed as some of the first episodes, some of the other podcasts, like when I started off podcasting, Chicago Bulls Central definitely benefited from the fact that I had been in podcasting for like 4 or 5 years at that point. But it's gotten better, right? I think a lot of those episodes were quicker. I left a lot of meat on the bones on some of the topics, and so now I just feel like it's a more fleshed out, realized show overall. And so hopefully you guys appreciate that. But as far as Marcus Morris or Luke Kennard, well, we don't have any open roster spots. And here's the thing: we can create one because Ernalot Batum is not fully guaranteed, so the Bulls can come off that deal. But I'd rather see Batum keep that role and see what we can have in him. We know who Marcus Morris is. We know who Luke Kennard is. We didn't really get to see a lot of Ernalot, and mainly because he suffered that eye injury very early into his stint of actually being on the Bulls roster. And so even some of his bad shooting nights, they could be blamed for that. And I want to give him an opportunity to show that he can bring more than that. And so I'd rather that go to. Now, if we end up making a trade for Zach and we include a Torrey Craig, we include a Javon Carter, or a trade for Vooch, and we include either one of those guys, and it creates an open roster spot, cool. I'm all for then at that point. The Bulls may be bringing in a veteran. Marcus Morris isn't somebody that I hate being here overall, but I kind of like where we are. I like the guys that we have, and I hope that continues, at least personally. But you guys can let me know what you guys think down below. All right, let's get into the last voicemail for today. This one's from Shay.
Yo, Haize, what's up, man? Look, I know a lot of people have been saying that we're probably the worst franchise and this and that, whatever, but I believe this. We have something that a lot of young teams don't have. We have experience of playing with each other. Now, I know we haven't won nothing. We've only had one playoff experience, but most of the guys on this team that made that one playoff experience are still on that team, and then too, a lot of the young guys kind of know how to play with each other, besides Montes Bluzellas. I believe that we could make some noise in this Eastern Conference, and I know for sure we could definitely make a play-in spot, but we possibly could be one of the top 5 or top 4 teams in the East, especially when you have guys that are willing to have something to prove. And on top of that, like I said, continuity does work in certain situations. And we kind of are in the continuity phase, where even though people may say, oh, we're rebuilding this and that, but we kind of are in the continuity phase, because let's face it, majority of the guys on this team, Ayo, Kobe, Patrick Williams, all of these guys have played with each other, so we have a feeling of most guys being on the roster from last season, and we know how each other work and how each other moves, and plus we already have a point guard in Josh Giddey that's trying to prove himself. But hey, I could be wrong. Anyway, tell me what you think. Peace.
Bulls have experience playing with each other. Here's the thing. They do, right? A lot of this roster, as much changes that we made, a lot of this roster is still the same. But what are the rotation pieces going to be? How much are they going to be in that rotation? Like guys like Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry, they could be fighting for spots. I don't know for sure, right? You guys know Billy Donovan goes about 9 deep. 8 deep usually, but he a 9 player with the 10th one kind of fluctuating in there. So when you look at the starting lineup of Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Zach LaVine, Patrick Williams, Nikola Vucevic, that's 5. Ayo Dosunmu, he's definitely going to be the first guard off the bench. Jalen Smith, because of the nature of him being the only other big that we have on the actual roster, Dama Sanogo's a 2-way. That takes you to 7 right there. You would like to think that as well as that Montes Bluzellas as a rookie is going to get in there. That's your 8, right? Even if he is getting in there as the guy who doesn't get consistent minutes, they're going to play him some. And then you got Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry. You got Chris Duarte, not to mention if Lonzo Ball is fully healthy, right? Torrey Craig. So the rotation is going to be interesting. But, and that's the thing is that a lot of the guys that, we have continuity of playing together, that bench, you're looking at 2 players in Jalen Smith and Montes Bluzellas who haven't been here, with maybe even Julian Phillips and Dalen Terry getting passed up by Torrey Craig and Lonzo Ball, who Lonzo still has to reacclimate. So we'll see what happens there. I do think that the fact that they've been here, though, that they know each other, they have that relationship, that definitely helps. The fact that they all like each other, right? And we'll see. Hopefully the chemistry of this team is something that we look at and say, hey, no, not only do they have chemistry on the court, but that friendship that they have, right? That kinship that they have ends up helping this team considerably so. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I also like the fact that we got young vets in a lot of ways. Like Kobe's a vet at this point in the NBA. He's 6 years in. He's a vet, but he's still young. He's 24 years old. So, those are also things to really look positively about as well. So let's see. Let's see what happens with this Bulls team. A great voicemail there, Shay. Great time today, guys. Man, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number 1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, and that's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, love you guys. Go Bulls. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.